Welcome to the Are You Being Real show. I'm sitting here with the one and only Chris Pan. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this day for 3 years.
Likewise.
You were a tough guest to lock down.
Well, it's an intimidating podcast.
It is. It took me 3.5 years to actually realize that. Yeah.
It's not easy.
Being real is, it's a thing. Like there's opportunities to be real with ourselves. Then there's like our closest friends who we maybe feel comfortable sharing something that we're struggling with or that's real. And then there's maybe like our next circle of friends that won't share everything with, but maybe you'd be willing to share like a general struggle. And then there's like the public forum.
There's
like
everybody,
which like most people
absolutely
want to be a little bit more careful what they share out publicly. So I certainly get that. But I'm stoked to have you here. I'm so inspired by who you be and what you create, and just like you are out and about standing for your mission, which is all about, injecting the world with positivity and helping people create over meaningful discussion that helps them create purpose. So it's such a beautiful mission, and I just want to acknowledge you here and drop into this conversation.
Yeah. I think the biggest challenge I faced, actually, I was at church last night, which is the first time I've gone in a long time, and it's feeling not good enough to be in my position because I don't have it figured out. I have a lot of aspects of me that I'm not necessarily proud of, and I actually went to a training that Carmina and
Caduce.
Camera Ready. Yeah, I did Camera Ready, and I remember at one point, Carmina just goes, "Chris, is anything ever good enough?" And that's one of those moments that's stuck with me for years. And it's something that I'm working on. I think on one hand, it's gotten me to where I am because nothing's ever good enough. So it propels me to keep going. Yeah. But also I think it can be a challenge that, I'm like not committing to something or, because it's not good enough, or somehow I don't go live, or I don't get up on stage. I don't make the video that I need to make because I feel like it's not good enough, or I don't write the letter that I need to write because it's not ready yet. And so that's a challenge.
Thank you for sharing. I can totally relate to that. Yeah. Something that I experience is where I'll feel like I'm putting my best foot forward and feel like that's still not good enough.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the way that I can kind of frame that is the not good enough is tied to maybe like the response or like the expectation that I have that, by putting myself out there with the podcast, that it'll resonate with people, and then more listeners will tune in, which will like create sponsors. And like, it just doesn't always work like that. And just because those results are there, it doesn't mean that I'm not good enough. It just probably means like, maybe the strategy needs to change a little bit, or it's not my time yet, or there could be a million different ways to look at it. But
yeah, it just, for me, I just feel like there's a lot of work. Like people see me and they say such nice things that you just said. And deep inside, I still feel like, well, I have a huge list of things I want to work on before I feel like I'm what you see.
And why is that?
I mean, it's probably something I grew up with. Yeah. It's, I think a lot to do with, just the, parents, family, expectations. I don't know. I mean, I think that's one of our biggest challenges is, one of the most popular words that people get is I am enough. And I think that's something that we all as a society struggle with. I think maybe it's partly the marketing messages or we're holding ourselves up to an impossible standard. I'm thinking of last night I was at church and I was thinking about the people that are on stage, like the pastor. And I'm like, oh wow, what if I was ever up there, but I'm not ready yet because there's parts of me that I'm not patient enough, or I'm not nice to people, or I am kind of selfish. And there was actually something, I think, I forget how he worded it, but he did say something that was quite, it was like, this is the place to gather for all the hypocrites and all the, like the people that are work in progress, because none of us are fully there. And I thought that was a nice way to, it was Christmas Eve, or it's Eve before Christmas Eve.
Right,
so
right.
It's like the one time I decided to go check it out and get some inspiration.
I feel you as well as someone who has high ambitions for yourself, like that keeps you motivated to do and be your best and to continue to unlock new possibilities for yourself, things that you couldn't do yesterday, like become the status quo. But then it becomes also a moving target, with someone like yourself with such a big vision. So it's kind of like, it's not black and white.
I think there's two goals. I think, and I, for me, most of my life has been focused around external measurable goals. How much money, how many people did you impact, all that. And I lose sight of who do I want to be. And I think that was a big theme that came out of my limited time through MITT, this training program that we've been through. There was a big emphasis of, well, that's all great. That's the doing part, but who do you want to be? Yeah. And I think that is probably the challenge that if I think about myself, that's, how do I want to show up and how do I want people to experience myself and still be able to get the results that I want to see? And that's the challenge that probably, it's the human being part.
It's not easy, right? It's like, it's tough enough to be ourselves, let alone throw in, all the additional variables of the noise and the conditioning and then our relationship to others. And if we're received, it's not always so easy to be a human. Yeah. So Chris, I'm curious to know a little bit about your 2018. Did you have a word that you chose last year that was going to be your intention for the year? Any major goals? I'm just curious to know how your kind of 2018 went.
A lot of 2017 was, I had the word surrender. Okay. And I just turned 40. And that was a big deal. Yeah, I'm 41 now.
You're killing it.
It was tough because I didn't imagine turning 40 being single and without kids. I always thought that, I just thought it would happen. But it didn't happen in August. And that was really tough. Feeling like, this project is going, but what about me personally? And so it took a while. It actually took until March. I ended up at Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within. Okay. And I had never danced and moved so much in 3 days. And I think the physical act of just moving a lot, I think kind of shook that out of me. And just being around Tony's energy and doing the firewalk, I was like, you know what? So what, I'm 40. It is what it is. I can't change that, but I can make the most of it. And that kind of got me out of my funk. Mm-hmm. And I ended up hiring a personal trainer who was over at my place 3 times a week, 8:45, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And just getting up and moving and getting, the endorphins and just moving, I think reshaped the rest of the year. So that was a huge win to just physically move more. Mm-hmm. I think that's a huge thing that I would impart with anybody was just get out more and do more stuff. And then the rest of the year has been much better. And I've been on different retreats, got on a few big stages, had the privilege of sharing this with a lot of companies and also with university students, thousands of students. And then got on the Extra Show. So there have definitely been some highlights. It's been a better second half of the year.
Amazing. Happy to hear that. Yeah, and how do you take all of that and kind of use that to start plotting out your 2019?
I was reflecting back on, this year for the project was around building infrastructure. It was, being able to support over 1 million tokens and over 1 million bracelets, and necklaces. So that took a lot of work from the team to just be able to supply that. It's, these were all hand braided. So we finally got the supply chain ready. I think we got the infrastructure to be able to support that. We've got, last year we had about 5,000 people that got the kits to be able to make bracelets themselves. Mm-hmm. And have the conversations, because that was always the original vision, was to be able to have people do it in person. It was never to have people just order from a website. And this year we're probably at over 25,000 people that, so we've 5x the number of makers out there. Yeah. This coming year is going to be how to support, 30,000 people that have the tools so that they can have even more impact in the world. And so it's having them have the same experience that I've been able to have, at our gatherings, asking people what's their word, going deep, getting people to be real about what they want, and then having it throughout various communities around the country and around the world.
I love it. I'm so inspired. I've had many MyIntent bracelets. I think my first one was intentional, because I wanted to just be very clear about the way I spend my time and to know what my focus is. So that was right when I started the podcast. That was my first MyIntent bracelet, and I think it was a necklace actually. And I've had Love, I've had Simplify, and I've got the Love Bomb one on right now. So I'm super fired up about them. And one of the things that I love about MyIntent is that, you know, you ask them, what's your word? And it can be any kind of thing that's important to them that they want to, you know, have as a reminder or as a focus. And having run accountability groups, I've really realized that the more in touch people are with their goals or what they want to create, the more that they see them around the house or the more that they think about them, the more likely they're going to become a reality versus that dream or idea that you have at some point in your life and then you don't remember it for another month. And like the chance of taking action is a lot less than if you literally are wearing it on your arm and every time you look down, you get that amazing reminder to, you know, be kind or, you know, to accept yourself,
totally,
to take action, be courageous. So I think it's so cool. And then as you mentioned that like the activations happen in person, I think is really cool. So
you're having at least one person witness what you want.
Right.
The person that's making it for you.
Making the powerful declaration out there. And then when you wear it around, there's that accountability because people will ask, yeah, that's a cool bracelet. Like, you know, why did you pick Love Bomb? And
And
opens up the door for conversation.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. So I'm curious, like, have you chosen your word for 2019?
I have a few that are on my mind. One is probably discipline.
Nice. Okay.
I think that's something that's way overdue. I think create. I want to create a lot more content. I think another one would be maker because it's all about the maker program. I want to really focus on less on just having people order single bracelets from us, but to actually become a maker and to be of service in their community. And then probably some other attributes that I'm still working on as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah, there's a bunch that's already swirling, and I've got a bunch of them on my nightstand. So depending on what I need that day, I can pull out.
I'm curious to take a deeper dive into discipline and like what that looks like specifically for you, because there's a lot to keep track of in this life. We have so many different areas of our lives, and then we have other people who are, you know, asking for our attention and stuff. So I'm curious to know what that would mean to you to be more disciplined.
I was actually really inspired by your last podcast
about
the Pareto principle, and then what was the other one that was, you know, you basically set a certain amount of time for a task, and you make sure it gets done in that time. And I've felt moments like that when we were going through the MITT training, when you were only given a certain amount of time, you had to do it. And I think I need to just give myself, like, I need to get this done the next hour. So no more, it's easy to get distracted. There's endless amount of content out there. And I want to just make sure that these certain deliverables get done in the time because, you know, I can always make excuses to just let it slide and deal with it later. But to actually schedule that out.
It's really powerful. Yeah. You're referring to Ajit Nawalka. He's got this 4x4 work concept where he only works 4 hours a day, but only 4 times a week as well. And it actually makes sense to me when you plot it out because it eliminates the time, you know, like where you're going to get distracted and like check social media in the middle of it or become too much of a perfectionist. Like it allows you, like, I have an hour. What is the intention here? Like, what result do I want to create? And so, like, allows you to think more macro and top level. It's the power
of deadlines.
Than getting lost in the details.
It's when you have a deadline, then you focus all that attention. Everything's tuned out, and I need to create more of those, either, you know, artificially or for real.
I think that's awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us. I wanted to delve a little bit deeper into MyIntent because I think it's so badass. And for everyone tuning in, Chris had a really amazing career. You started out at McKinsey doing consulting, which is like one of the top consulting firms in the world. And then you did marketing at PepsiCo and then worked at Facebook for 4 years, I believe.
Correct.
And, you know, kicking ass there. And you left it all behind. Yeah. To start MyIntent.
To start the next chapter, yeah. And the question was, what does the world need more of? And I thought my world needed more community, more connections, more positivity. And this happened to be the way that I'm able to bring it to life.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you looked for what you thought the world could use more of. Yeah. That was kind of the start of it.
And what, you know, worked with my skill set and what I was interested in.
And so tell us the story. So how did it become a pendant that had a word on it?
It started January of 2013 when I was at this other retreat called the Hoffman Process.
Okay, yeah, I've heard that's amazing.
It's very powerful. You're in a room. There's 40 of us. And there was a lot of questions being asked of us, right? The same type of questions that you go inward and you find your own answers. And I thought that was so powerful. It was the one time in my life where people didn't tell me how to be, but they actually gave me the opportunity to find out my answers. And so that's one of the foundations of the MyIntent project is, we ask questions. We don't give people words. Yeah. It's not like you're choosing from, here's a bunch of pre-made stuff you get to pick from, but it's what do you need? What do you want? And at the end of that 7 days, we were invited to commit to something and to declare our intention. And so I said, well, how do I take this amazing 7-day experience, $5,000, and make it accessible to a lot more people? Because, that's 40 people every 2 weeks. So in a year, they're able to support maybe 1,000 people. But I wanted to, from my days at Facebook and PepsiCo, I wanted to support a lot more people. And so I started having these gatherings and had all different activities. And one of the activities was asking people, what's your word? Which is basically what's your intention. But it's actually a little bit broader because it's what's most meaningful to you. What do you want to remind yourself? So that ended up really taking off. And people kept asking me for, ones for their loved ones. And then eventually people wanted the tools to do it themselves. And now we've made that available for folks.
It's phenomenal vision. I love how you really whittled it down to something that was so accessible and goes outside of just people who, are big self-help junkies, that it could really resonate with anyone. Now, I went to your holiday party, I think probably 3 or 4 years ago, and you presented a little bit more about the story. And I know the way that you just told that, people got the bracelets and they wanted, but it wasn't really that easy. And I remember that there was a point where you maybe went to Asia or something and you thought it was over, that you thought it was complete.
I just thought it was a passion project. Okay. Just a side thing. And then the last day I was there, I saw a photo of Kanye wearing it on the cover of the Time 100. Right. And that was a big sign to me to keep going.
Gotcha. Okay. So it turned from all right, this is something that I love doing, a passion, to this is actually a business.
Well, let's just see it. Let's see.
Yeah, okay.
And then we've had other incidents that have kept it going.
Yeah.
There have been multiple times I'm like, oh, this is where do we max this out? Is this, are we done?
Yeah.
Right.
We have a lot of folks who listen to the show who really want to stand for what they believe in and to create something that they can share with other people. And you've done such a beautiful job. You said that there's 20+ thousand activators,
30,000 makers, people that have the tools.
Right.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to someone else who wants to start a movement? What have been the most top level things that you could share that you think would be of value to help say people either get clear on their vision or to not waste time and be more intentional with their time?
I think just test it a lot. Just keep doing it and see if you stick with it, and then get proof of concept to see if other people like it and if they're resonating with it. And then part of it is just going with the flow and figuring out where the momentum is. I think we just kept going.
Yeah.
And it's fun. And people seem to enjoy it. Are you asking people to do something? Because for a movement to happen, people have to want to do it.
Right.
And are you making it easy? So one of the things I will say is what we've done is we've made it super easy. I should go get one of the kits, but there were a few elements. If you kind of dissect the MyIntent project if we're talking more business right now, I think having the celebrities gives it credibility and it gives it a little bit of sizzle. It makes people, be like, oh, this is kind of cool. But actually, this was happening for quite a while with 0 celebrities. The inherent experience is powerful because what we're really doing is connecting people to their intention.
I think it's brilliant. As someone who's had a podcast about being real for 3.5 years, I love the way that you've tied together the deeper mission where you felt there was opportunity for people to find more purpose and connection and positivity through it. And then you found the vehicle, which, it's the pendant with the word to build off of it. So I think that is just so incredibly inspiring. So thank you. I'm curious to learn a little bit more about your childhood. Because I know you mentioned that a little bit earlier that you thought that maybe that part of what I heard to be some sort of perfectionism or having a high standard or bar, which keeps you motivated, but also keeps you in the question a little bit. I'm curious to know what were you as a kid and what were the things that drove you back then? Are they the same things that drive you today?
It was tough as a kid. I was in Cincinnati. I was the only Asian kid in a pretty predominantly white school district. we were the poorest, family in a really nice neighborhood. And so, yeah, I definitely had something to prove. I was definitely not the kid that got invited to all the parties and all the gatherings. And, but it kind of gave me fuel to want to fit in. I mean, I think a lot of this project is about fitting in, and it's about belonging. And, through this, I've been able to meet so many people and been invited to so many gatherings. And so there is a personal benefit in addition to, I'm putting good into the world, but it's also helping me connect with people in a deeper, more meaningful way as well.
It's really awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's, I can relate, because part of the reason why I have this podcast and why I'm focused on being real is like real conversations is where I found I connected most with other people, which usually brought more love into my life. So like I realized on that deep rooted level that is a big thing of what drives me. So I think it's really cool that you found this mechanism that not only serves you, but serves other people as well. And I'm also kind of surprised with what you said, that you weren't, like at a lot of parties, because you literally are at every single party now. You're everywhere.
It's been a great vehicle to connect and be a part of the LA community here.
It's phenomenal. I wanted to ask you just a few more kind of rapid fire questions so we can kind of just get to know you a little bit better. Question for you: what is something that you believe in firmly that you feel like most people would disagree with?
The thing that comes to mind right now is, because the Trump wall has been in the news so much, I just think there's validity in both sides of most stories. Like, without sharing where I fall in, I can understand both sides of why people believe in A and B. And I think that's the case I think that's why this project exists, is, there a lot of times there's no wrong answers. It's just they have a different answer. And I think part of what I hope this project does is it helps, bring people to the table. And really, I think when people, it's the word empathy, right? You don't have to agree with them, but like, why does someone believe in this so strongly that they're willing to go to bat for this? Like, what is underlying that? And I think, it's kind of like having people be real and really listening. And that because I think a lot of people would just be like, oh, they're wrong. And so I try to take a step back and say, well, why do they believe what they do? And that might, be in a disagreement with a lot of people, because they would just be like, no, like, you're just wrong.
I agree with that there's two sides to every story. And it's like, I think that being able to understand the perspectives, that empathy, I think is very valuable. And certainly
if you go back to the Hoffman process, they kept saying this one phrase. It goes something like, everyone's to blame, but no one's at fault. And I thought that was really profound. It's like, you can, and basically what they taught was a lot of it traces back to how you were brought up. And then how your parents were brought up, because that's who raised you. And if you trace back far enough, and that's where a lot of the hurt and a lot of the traumas were. And I thought that was really profound, because that takes, you don't have to be angry. You can disagree with someone, but you don't have to be angry at them. You don't have to judge them. It takes out the judgment part. And I think with this, and I'll just mention, having this set of tools and the ability to ask someone, what's your word? It's like my ability to have a podcast. Like, I get to go around, and anytime I want, I get to drop into a conversation with someone. And I had a conversation with someone a few nights ago where I just asked her, I said, what's your word? And she said, conquer. And she said, I had a traumatic brain injury a few years ago. And then we kept talking, and she's like, oh my gosh. She's like, normally when I meet a stranger, this never comes up. And the fact that you learn about this within a couple minutes is a testament to the power of this question and the power of what you do. And I said, thank you. But that is why I asked the question, because we get into much more interesting topics very quickly.
There's a time and a place for talking about a sports game, or talk about movies and celebrities and pop culture and stuff like that.
Sure.
But like, you might think that person who you had the conversation with was cool or interesting, but probably wouldn't feel a deep connection.
Yeah.
Versus if like you ask the focusing question, what's your word? That led to a deeper conversation. Like, all of a sudden you're relating to each other on a deeper level.
And how did this trauma affect you? Because this fundamentally changed this person's life. And I think that's way more interesting.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things too. It's tough. It's not easy, but it's much easier to talk about things external to us than it is to talk about what we're going through. And that's the whole point of your podcast.
I feel like I'm the opposite. I've always felt that to talk about something like sports or music or movies, it like requires you to be up to speed on
that's true
what is, you know, deemed to be popular conversational chatter, whatever it may be. But to me, like speaking my truth, like I don't need to know anything else. I can just express how I'm feeling, and I know that that's not, oddly, maybe isn't the status quo. But like you don't need to know anything outside of yourself to be able to contribute in a conversation if you're just expressing.
Have to be willing to go there into areas where there might be trauma, pain, and hurt and discomfort.
Sure. You know, it's like, well, what do we ultimately, you know, want most? We want to feel like we're here and that we matter, and that we're, you know, appreciated and loved. But oftentimes, like when we're hiding behind surface level conversation, it doesn't actually give us that opportunity for what we really want most.
Totally.
So it's like, you know, a little contradictory, but you know, that's why we do the work that we're doing. And that's why I think it's so inspiring that you found a way to create something that works on so many levels, where it's like you've created like a really easy, fun way for people to bond in a meaningful level that meets people where they're at, that fits within like the current, you know, rules of society. And like, it also is something that's allowing you to live the lifestyle that you want by, you know, being a profitable social business. Question for you. What have been some of the most popular words? If people are thinking about what word they want to set for 2019.
You know, funny enough, our most popular words, you know, they're actually, one answer is there isn't any. Okay. The most popular would be like strength, love, faith, hope, believe, you know, so the ones that you would probably think about. But those collectively represent less than, you know, like a few % of total. But love bomb. Conan O'Brien got the word deathbed as a reminder. Is this going to matter on my deathbed?
I love that.
Right. We've had such creativity and personalization that it's really open for what is it that you want to see that really resonates with you. You know, I've got the word compassion. I've got the word purpose. So those are pretty popular. And then I have the word it's time, from the song by Imagine Dragons. It's time to begin, isn't it? And it's a reminder to not procrastinate and to go for it. You know, but that's not a popular word, but it's something that works for me. And I think deathbed is interesting because it like reminds you, all right, like I'm not gonna be around forever, to live now and like not to sweat the small stuff. I think as well. But I what that kind of leads me is, so are you familiar with the 5 Regrets of the Dying? By Bronnie Ware. I remember reading the article.
So she's like basically says the 5 things that people regret on their deathbeds is that they lived the life that others expected of them versus what was like authentic, the life they wanted to live, and that they didn't spend their time wisely. They lost touch with people that they care about. That they didn't allow themselves to be fully self-expressed, or didn't allow themselves to be happier. So those are the kind of the 5 things. So to me, I think that deathbed kind of metaphor is actually a great like guideline to live within in terms of making authentic decisions, where it's like you want to reach the end of your life, or at least I would imagine you want to reach the end of your life and feel like, wow, I lived my life to the fullest. I put it all out there, and you know, and I lived it. So I think that's one way for me when I look at what does it mean to live authentically. I think living with that lens, the deathbed lens, actually is like a great kind of roadmap for living authentically. So in this world where there is so much conditioning, and we do live in a society, we have to play the money game to some extent. I'm curious, what does being authentic, like, what does that even mean? Curious to hear your take.
I mean, am I going to have kids? That's a big one, right? Because I feel like there's an expectation I would. But I think once I've let that go, I think it feels more free, and it allows me to just move forward and enjoy the moment. And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it's not the end of the world. Well, I can't believe I just said that. That's probably
awesome.
But I think, you know, I think a lot of depression is caused by when you have certain expectations. And I've heard multiple people say it's all about appreciation and gratitude and just, you know, enjoying the moment, because this could be it. Like, who knows? And just taking it, you know, one moment at a time.
I love it. Absolutely beautiful. We talked a lot about different transformational programs. Like 4 or 5 have been thrown out here over the course of this discussion. I'm curious to know, is there one that you feel is like at the top? If someone is like looking to do a powerful transformational workshop, which one would you
I think
point
they're all
them
so
to?
different. I mean, I think their location, price, how, style. There are some that are probably more in your face, and I akin to that to be more like football. Whereas, there's I would say MITT is more like in your face and it's like full contact. Whereas like the Hoffman, it was more like yoga. It was a little bit softer. There was still a lot of work done and there was a lot of exertion, but it's just not as in your face. And depending on what you're in the mood for, sometimes you want the more like in your face. Sometimes you want something that's more of a gentle approach, and they have different prices, and so forth. I do believe that these are powerful and that more of us would benefit from going through stuff like this. I mean, what have you done that's been helpful?
I've done, mastery and transformational training, MITT, and, plant medicine, and, I go to Burning Man every year, which is kind of a sort of a transformational training of some sort.
Sure.
Done a lot of like little smaller one-offs, but I haven't done Landmark yet. I haven't done Hoffman yet.
Yeah.
I haven't done Camerati yet.
Tony.
So there's I've watched a lot of Tony Robbins, but I haven't attended any of his workshops, in person.
I mean, I will say this for those at home, and I'm very guilty of this, is I don't do the work that much. Guilty.
Okay.
Meaning, yesterday when I sat down and started recapping the year, that was probably the first time I actually put pen to paper and started actually doing the work. I think it's always easy to keep watching the videos and to keep reading stuff, but to actually pause and to do the work.
Yeah.
That's where all the impact is.
Agreed. Being in the question.
And I think that's the point of the project, is to put people in the question.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't, I would say you don't necessarily need it if you don't have the money or you don't have the time to go to a transformational experience, but if you actually just carve out some time and grab some questions and go through them, that will get you part of the way there. You might not go as deep as if you go to a boot camp, but you'll get some of the benefits of having it work out.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, definitely. I highly recommend any of those workshops. I think are fantastic. I think the key is going in there, being open, allowing yourself to go with the process and see whatever comes up for you, whatever the result is. The last question of this part of the interview is, I'm just curious to kind of get your take on the state of the world and where things are going. Like, are you in a place where like you feel like you have a lot of faith in like where we're going? Clearly you have a beautiful project that maybe 10, 15 years ago might have not have taken off the way it has today. So I'm curious to get your take.
It's definitely enabled by social media and by the internet, e-commerce. The state of the world. I think the world really needs projects like ours. I think there's more and more. There's always distractions. There are always things that are coming at you saying you're not enough, that you need to buy this, you need to buy that.
Yeah.
I think people more than ever are hungry for connection. I was just listening to another podcast. The topic was how we gather, and they were saying that the most popular religion right now is no religion. That the millennials, most of them don't have a place to call home, and they're going to Soul Cycle and they're going to circuit training places, but people still have that need for belonging.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a big market, and when I say market, like there's a big need for people to connect. And I think that's the business we're in. We're in the connection, community building business. And that, I believe, is a trend that's actually like there's a huge gap for it.
Great opportunity. If you got any ideas floating around, go for it. So, Chris, we're going to wrap this up. What can we do to support you?
To support the project, I think go to our website, go to myintent.org and get yourself a maker kit. And bring this to your next dinner party. Instead of grabbing a bottle of wine, grab your maker kit. That's what I do. I actually just bring it to every dinner party I go to. And after dinner, or even before dinner, just break out the kit, ask people for a word, make them a bracelet, and you will be the most popular person there, guaranteed.
Sure. I just gotta spell out the contrast between like bringing a bottle of wine and bringing the kit. Like no one will even probably know that you brought the bottle of wine for that exact second that you make eye contact with the host to like show that you brought the bottle of wine.
Yeah.
And then with the MyIntent kit, like you're literally creating an opportunity to connect with people.
You're making a difference in the lives of every person that's there.
Yeah.
And then I've had so many opportunities come about because they're wearing the bracelet.
Yeah.
And I remember I did a TEDx talk, and the organizer was looking for one last speaker, and she looked down on her wrist, and then I got the call. So you have something that's meaningful on the wrist of every person that you serve.
Sure. And it extends beyond the date of the party, and if you even threw that party, people are going to be thinking about that party more often. So definitely recommend checking it out. They're such a valuable tool. Like, I wear mine with pride, and it's always very supportive. It's just a great reminder. I know for me, I got Love Bomb because Love Bomb is, my dream, what I committed to creating and bringing to the world in 2019. And I've got lots of competing interests. Like, there's a lot of things that I want to do. So by, wearing this Love Bomb, it reminds me that this is my top priority and that I want to be making decisions on a day-to-day basis that are supporting me and bringing what I really strive to be a great gift to the world in this Love Bomb app. So this is just really keeping me focused.
The power of appreciation.
Yeah.
You bring appreciation to everyone.
Indeed.
Thank you.
So, Chris, one of my favorite questions to ask at the end of these interviews is we've got the public conversation that we're having, and then there's usually some sort of form of internal dialogue. So I'm curious to know, in the spirit of being real, what's, has anything come up for you below the hood in the last hour?
It's like, is this good enough? Am I saying the right things? Am I being articulate?
Yeah.
God, I really need to think through my answers.
Okay.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of judgment that I'm still working through.
Gosh, okay.
And I think that was, when you go into the Hoffman, they actually ask you to do a very comprehensive intake form. Yeah. And judgment, criticalness, that was definitely perfectionism. Those were all high. And it's a reminder that 5 years later, I'm still working on a lot of the same issues.
Yep. When will it be enough?
Yeah. I mean, but it's a work in progress.
It is a work in progress. It is a work in progress.
But I'm here because I finally said, you know what?
Yeah.
In the spirit of bringing the project to more people, I'll be not good enough. But hopefully somebody watching this or listening to this will be inspired to think about their own word and hopefully join the project and take this to their community, and that will be worth the imperfection that I'm putting out there.
Totally, yeah. Lesson that I continue to learn with this podcast and everything that I do is, like, it's not about me. Like, if I am choosing to let my insecurities or my self-doubt even get in the way of the conversation, it's not going to be as good of a conversation, and then I'm not serving everyone who's listening. Right. So realizing, like, it's not about me. I'm just, like, creating the space here for, like, these conversations, and that, that's what you're doing with MyIntent. That, like, when we get out of our own ways,
people are like, this is my word. That's why when Kanye put it on the cover, he never was like, oh, this is the MyIntent bracelet. Right. He's like, this is my word. Like, my word is beautify. I have it right here, and let me show the world. And when I go up to someone, I never say, oh, let me tell you about my project. I always just say, hey, what's your word? Yeah. I connect them to their word. Yeah. And when that happens, they get the bracelet. If they want to ask me afterwards, I'll tell them all about it. But they're under no obligation to ask. And actually, I would rather if we talk about something else. Yeah. Because I've talked that story way too many times. Yeah. But yeah, this is about connecting people with their word. Okay. And I learned this when I was at Facebook. The key insight was nobody actually really likes Facebook. People like their friends. And Facebook allows them to connect with their friends. And they like their friends' photos. They like their friends' videos. And the faster Facebook can help find a new user, their friends, the more likely they were to stay. And that was probably my biggest contribution when I was there, was helping the team realize if a new user comes on board and they don't find their friends, they're not coming back. And so there was a sprint and a huge effort to make sure that every new user, within a few weeks, they're at least at 20 friends. Right. And that was a huge goal. And so for me, the goal here is right when I meet someone, hopefully within a few minutes, I can help them find their word, and then off we go.
Amazing. So I think that's a great segue as we pretty much wrap this up. How should people find their word for 2019?
So spend some time, just think about, well, actually, the easy way is, there are 3 questions on our website that you can go to myintent.org. The 3 questions I've always asked people are, who do you want to be, what do you want to have, and what do you want to do? So who do you want to be is what's a virtue or quality you want more of in your life? So more patience, more kindness. What do you want to have? Meaning, what's a challenge you want to overcome? Right? So is it more resilience? Is it more discipline, more focus? And then lastly, what's a passion you want to spend more time on? What do you want to do? Like, is it to create more? Is it to dance more, to sing, to smile? What do you physically want to do? So who do you want to be? What do you want to have? What do you want to do? Pick something that you think will make the biggest difference for you. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Right? Because sometimes people are like, oh my God, I need the perfect word. I'm like, this is not a tattoo. You can get more than one. You can get one and then realize a couple of days later you actually want something else. But you can have multiple at the same time too. So don't overthink it. And there you are.
Cool.
And do the work. Take the time. And if it doesn't come up right away, don't get flustered. Just let it sink in. And, if you want to do some writing, write down some ideas. I usually have people write some stuff down, and usually, if they circle a couple of things or have a conversation with someone, A lot of times people don't think in single words, but if you have a conversation, a few sentences later, you'll start noticing certain words pop out at you.
Sure. Or getting the reflection from someone else.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it sounds like love is definitely.
This is what makes sense. And then the follow-up question would be like, well, what is it going to take for you to find that person? Or who do you need to be? How do you need to show up? And so forth.
My favorite kind of conversations right there. So cool. Chris, last question. What final words of wisdom, encouragement do you have for listeners of Are You Being Real? Maybe it's something that you were thinking about as you were driving over here today.
The one that comes to mind is just to keep going. I always, a very dear friend always said life is a game of Zelda. Meaning, you go through and you're picking up keys and weapons and tools, and you don't know how that's going to come into play. And it's kind of like the Steve Jobs, like, the dots connect going backwards, but just keep going and just keep asking the questions. I think that is important, to keep doing the work. How can you serve? How can you grow? How do you want to make a difference? What makes you happy? And just to keep going.
Boom. The one and only Chris Pan. Chris, it's been fun.
Yeah,
it was worth the wait. I'm glad we're having this conversation now. The perfect time with 2019.
Yeah, as we wrap up 1 year, and
here we go. So yeah, wishing everybody an incredible year. So this has been fun.
Thank you.